record. Okay, I think we're all good. And once again, welcome to part 2 of your Thurgood Marshall College orientation. Today we'll be focusing on our TMC community. Just to reintroduce myself, hi, my name is Kayla. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an incoming 4th year with a major in human development and a double minor in education studies and political science. And I'm one of 3 senior orientation leaders. I'm really happy to get to work with you all today. Now I'm going to be passing it on to our professional staff, Fanon, who will be joining us today.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Fanon Kaflesky. I serve as your Assistant Dean of Student Affairs. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm super excited for us to delve into today's session and the topics that help us build an inclusive community.
Thank you, Fanon. Really excited to be getting to do part 2 with you today. And yeah, we are super excited to have you back and be able to spend this session focused on our social identities, lived experience, social justice, and what it means to build and sustain an inclusive community, all of which are core values in Marshall College. Before we begin, we just wanted to remind you all of a few things. First is if you're having concerns or any emergencies throughout the orientation session, feel free to send me a private message on Zoom. Please also remember that orientation is mandatory as well as participation, and attendance will be taken throughout this entire session. If you're having connection issues, you drop out of the call or you can't come back in, don't forget we have a troubleshooting Zoom room where our orientation interns, Cece and Isaac, can also help redirect you. We want to encourage you all to turn on your cameras if you're comfortable with it so that we can continue building Marshall community. Your orientation leaders may utilize some visual activity so it can benefit you to have your camera on. However, remember to keep your audio muted unless you're participating in a breakout session or during large group debrief. Lastly, on your video panel, please select the Show Active Speaker View during the presentation so that you're able to give your full undivided attention to the presenter. And lastly, please be respectful of the speakers, your orientation leaders, and your peers. Again, we thank you all for being here today. We consider this responsibility of orienting you to UC San Diego and Marshall College an honor, and we don't take that responsibility lightly. Thank you in advance for your active engagement in today's session and in our activities. We're going to go to the next slide, and we're going to be doing a land acknowledgement. As we welcome you to Thurgood Marshall College, formerly known as Third College and Lumumba Zapata College, we start by acknowledging the history of the land on which Marshall College and UC San Diego reside. UC San Diego sits on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. We, as members of the UC San Diego community, must acknowledge the legacy of the Kumeyaay people. While we might not all currently occupy Kumeyaay territory, we must acknowledge the legacy of the indigenous people who originally inhabited the land we consider home, work, and school. As you begin your journey at Marshall College, we ask you to consider what it means to be a student, constantly learning and being provided with various opportunities at a colonial institution that is one of many sources of ongoing violences and settler colonialism. Please join me in a moment of reflection while we consider that tension. Thank you. In the spirit of healing and justice, we as Marshall College acknowledge and honor the Kumeyaay people, past, present, and future. In naming and acknowledging the history of the land, the people, and the cultures, we hope to disrupt the pattern of oppression faced by Indigenous communities in San Diego, California, the United States, and all around the world. Social justice issues are deeply linked, and as you learn more today, we urge you to explore the connections between systems of oppression and our common struggles towards liberation. I'll now be passing it off to Fanon to go over the agenda for today.
Thank you, Kayla, and thank you for the land acknowledgement. For part 2, as Kayla mentioned, our focus is our TMC family, our community, and the values that fuel our work as a college. And so We are going to do a community check-in shortly, and then we will go into our keynote from Dr. Amanda Solomon, who's the director of our Dimensions of Culture program. We'll have a short break and then do an activity to provide opportunity for self-reflection, and then we'll do some community conversations around who am I? And then we'll take another short break and then come back together to do the social identities and experiences activity that you all did in advance of today's session on the Canvas page. You'll get a chance to share those reflections with your peers and with your OL. And then we'll come together again to do a social justice and you conversation, really trying to make meaning of our entire session today and what it means to be a scholar and citizen. And then we'll close out and you all will get an opportunity to give us feedback on your orientation experience. So we'll transition into the community check-in. And before we do that, we kind of want to carve out time and space to talk about why this is important. I shared with you all in part one that I'm a Marshall College alum and I'm very proud to be a staff at the college. And my time at Marshall College and at UC San Diego was transformational. Like, I thought I knew who I was before I came to UCSD, and it really shook me up in all the right ways. And so I feel honored to be able to support you all through your college journey. And so I'll be real with you. Like I just mentioned, I came into UCSD and Marshall College thinking I was pretty open-minded, that I had a diverse set of friends, that I cared about issues, that I respected people. And I didn't really realize how entrenched in my socialization I was until I had to really grapple with living with people who had different identities and experiences with me, and then also being exposed to different layers of oppression, right? And how it was manifesting on our college campus, but also in people's lives and in my own life, right? And so I got an opportunity to take courses and to get engaged in activism on campus. And really that ignited in me a passion for social justice and equity, and also that I had agency, right? That I get to play a part in creating the world that I live in, and that we don't have to take the reality for what it is, right? Like, we can make the changes. And so I got to get real about my positionality in society, to talk with others about their position in society, and to think about how do we want to show up? What are our values at our core? And how do we bring more alignment into how we engaged on campus and in society at large? And so that's a little bit about why this work is important to me. And as Kayla mentioned, it's so embedded in the college's history and the culture that we hope to build in our community, right? That this self-reflection, this understanding of complex histories and social issues, and then thinking about what that then means to be both a scholar and a global citizen. That's why we spend 3 hours of orientation really thinking about our own identities, hearing others and their experiences, and then reflecting on, what is the world we want to live in, and how do we get equipped collectively to bring that world into fruition. And so we're super excited, and we hope that this serves as a foundation for the ways that you're going to lean into community and have these deeper self-reflection conversation, but collective conversations about what is possible, right? And so before we delve even deeper into our conversation, we're just going to ask some folks to, get a sense of where we're already at with social justice or social issues, and ask folks to share in the chat, what does the concept of social justice mean to you, or how you would define social justice, right? It's a term that gets used a lot, right? And it's helpful for us to get a sense of how we have relationship with that concept before we get deeper into today's session. So invite folks to drop in the chat. What are your thoughts on what social justice is? looking out for marginalized communities, providing equal opportunity, equal rights, answering for injustices that happened in the past and not making the same ones again. I love that. Liberation and equity for all people, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity. We can go so on and so forth around other social identities there. Holding others, including ourselves, accountable. I love that. I think we try to cultivate a space of accountability, right? We're all on a journey, right, towards equity and inclusion. And so that also helps when people give us feedback and help us hold ourselves accountable to alignment. Fighting for equality and equity, working towards safer communities for all, standing up for others who do not have the same privileges and opportunities as ourselves. I know at Marshall, we talk about we're not cultivating a community where we're shameful, right, of privileges, but that we think about how we leverage privilege to create access for others, right? Invite you to read what others are adding into the chat, addressing historic and current injustices and working towards equal and equitable representation and opportunities for all. Thank you all. And at this time, we'll transition into a poll, again, just to try to get a sense of where we are at as a community. So talking about social identities and experiences is normal in my family, community, or upbringing. Or I chose Marshall College because of its social justice focus. Seeing the responses come in, thank you all. Yeah, and as we continue to see responses come in, and I invite you all to continue to engage. We want to just name that talking about social identities and experiences is not normalized in our society, right? And at the same time, for some of us, our ability to constantly stay aware of our social identities is how we survive different spaces, right? And there is a range there, and wherever you are in that range, we hope that you will stay open to the conversation today, that you lean in to sharing and to hearing and listening so that we can collectively bring that wisdom into our Marshall community, and we can think about how we move closer to equity and inclusion for all of us. Okay, so wide range, right? Some of us are versed and comfortable talking about this because we talk about it with our family and communities. And some of us maybe chose Marshall College specifically because of this focus, and others maybe not, right? Maybe it's because we're so close to the beach and we have good food, right? All of that is okay. We're here now as a community and we're going to work through it together. And then our next question for you all is just to get a sense of comfort with discussing social justice issues with your peers. Enjoy it and love it. Not sure. This is going to be my first experience with it, and everything in between. Invite folks to continue to respond. And I'll share that I was not sure if this is my first experience when I first entered UCSD, and I ended up in the enjoy it and love it and changed my major to ethnic studies, and have found my life's work in it, right? So we have a few more folks. Thank you. So no matter where you are in this, comfort scale, I just want to acknowledge that today's conversations is about equipping all of us to be able to have deeper and more meaningful conversations with one another as members of a community, because those conversations is how we get equipped to really think about who's being included, who's being excluded in the ways that we're going to navigate our campus. And that helps us, right, bring life to our hashtag at the college, TMC is family, right? And so we ask that if you are in the uncomfortable, challenging, not sure yet place about comfort engaging in this conversation, we ask you to trust the process and to be open to the experience. And so thank you all for your engagement on the polls and in the chat. And we're going to transition into our keynote address from Dr. Solomon.
So now we'll be starting the session with an opening keynote. We're excited to hear from Dr. Amanda Solomon, the Director of Dimensions of Culture Writing Program here at Marshall College. In addition to her work in DOC, Dr. Solomon teaches an intersectional feminism seminar for undergraduates and does Asian American solidarity work in the San Diego community. Her work focuses around Filipinx literature. You can also catch her in hoop earrings and wearing Air Jordans. So we can play the video now.
Back to orientation for Thurgood Marshall College. I am Dr. Amanda Solomon Amaral, and I am Director of the Dimensions of Culture program here at TMC. And I'm so excited and happy to be able to talk to you all about DOC and about how DOC and, well, really TMC in general is a place where we hope you'll be able to explore your sense of self and identity, and especially how that identity is shaped by society. So I think that I should probably start first by sharing a little bit about myself and who I am and my identity. So as I said, I'm the DOC director. You can call me Dr. Solomon. This is my email address. If anybody wants to send me an email, whether or not you'll be enrolled in my DOC courses, I'm always happy to speak to students and dialogue with you all about your thoughts and your ideas, especially as it relates to what we're doing at Marshall College, what we're learning in DOC. So I've been on this campus, I've been on UCSD campus for a very long time. I was a master's student and a PhD student here in the Literature and Cultural Studies program. And I came here specifically to study Asian American literature and specifically Filipino American literature. And I wrote my dissertation on English literature from the Philippines in the early 20th century. It's in the library if anybody ever wants to look at it or read it. And so I consider myself a scholar of Asian American lit and specifically Filipino American studies. I'm currently working on a book, which is going to be published next year, on Filipino American feminism and activism. And I love to read and write about really broadly Asian American literature and multi-ethnic literature. When I'm not researching and writing, I'm teaching, and teaching is really my first love. Actually, again, like I said, I've been on this campus for a really long time. I was a teaching assistant on this campus at Revelle Humanities, believe it or not, before I became assistant director at Six College, and now I'm director here at Marshall College. And I have a deep love for teaching and for working with first-year students in particular on this campus. And I learn so much every day from my students, and that's why I want to be here doing this work. When I'm not teaching or writing, I'm really active in the Filipino American community here in San Diego. For 7 years, I was executive director of a youth mentorship program that worked with Filipino American students, providing spaces and workshops around identity and culture and just learning about one's history and oneself and one's place in the world, which is why I love being the DOC director, because I get to do that with you all, hopefully, in this coming year. So when I'm not teaching, when I'm not writing, when I'm not working in the community, I'm a mom. I have two little ones, two little girls, who I'm working really hard to raise into strong and independent women. And I like to talk about them. I talk about them quite a bit when I teach. So if you're in my lecture, so much of what I learn about my own identity and my understanding of the world, I actually learn from my kids, because when kids ask you questions and you have to actually explain why things are the way they are in the world, it really does make you stop and think, why are they like that? Why is it like that? And so that's me. I'm a scholar, I'm a teacher, I'm a community organizer, and I'm a mom. Those are my identities. Those are all the different facets of who I am and who I bring into the classroom. And I hope it'll become clear as I talk, for the rest of this presentation and as you move into the activities after this, that Doc and Marshall College really is a place where we invite you to learn about yourself and yourself in relationship to others. And how I primarily do that and support that is through running the Dimensions of Culture program. I teach a lecture myself, but I also administer and lead a really amazing staff of folk here at Doc. So I want to talk now about who else is in Doc that you will encounter or meet in the courses. What is Doc? What actually is it? And what does it do? How does it function in the university? What's its purpose in the university? And then I think more importantly, why? Like, why should you care beyond the fact that you have to take Doc, especially if you're a first year student? Why does it even matter? Why is it like worth your time, honestly, right? So those are the three things I hope to answer or pose to you. So who is in Doc that you should know? Okay. So I am incredibly proud to lead a team of brilliant and strong women. Dr. Emily Johnston is our associate director, and she'll be teaching the first Doc 1 lecture in the morning. I believe it's at 10 a.m. Dr. Megan Strom is our full-time Doc lecturer, and she will be teaching the afternoon Doc 1 courses. And then Sue Hawkinson, many of you first-year students have been receiving lots of emails from Sue Hawkinson. She is our administrative coordinator. She basically handles all the logistical details having to do with class size and enrollment. Gwen Fish is our in-house tutor. So if any of you at all need any support with your Doc coursework, she is absolutely the person to go to. And then Natalie Pass is our upper division Doc 100D lecturer. And so if you are taking any sort of Doc course, whether it's the upper division or lower division class, these are amazing and important people to know, and you will get to know them and meet them through the course of your coursework, your classwork. So what is Doc? All right. So now you know a little about me, you know a little about the people, but like, what is this? What is this DOC? What is this Dimension of Culture program? So to understand Doc, you need to understand the college system here at UCSD. And so UCSD has, well, it had 6, now we have a 7th college. It has 7 different residential colleges on our campus, and these 7 colleges house students, right? And these 7 colleges govern the general education requirements for the students. Now, the best like analogy I can give you is if anybody knows Harry Potter, right? So Harry Potter, he goes to Hogwarts. There's one school of witchcraft and wizardry, but the students are all sorted by a magical talking hat, which we don't have, but it would be cool if we had. But they're all sorted, right, by this magical talking hat, depending on their like who they are, right? Their characteristics, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, into these 4 different houses. So UCSD is kind of similar in that it's UCSD, it's one university, but our students self-select and are sorted into 7 different colleges that have very distinct and unique identities and attitudes and histories and culture and general education requirements. And for better or for worse, Marshall College is known as the Social Justice College. I mean, we're named after Thurgood Marshall, the first African-American Supreme Court Justice. He was a legal mastermind of the court case, Plessy v. Ferguson, that undid, right, juridical segregation in the United States. And so Marshall College has a very particular history to it and a very particular culture to it. And you've joined our college. Now, for transfer students who may not have fulfilled either their writing requirement coming into Marshall College, coming into the university, or for transfer students who need to fulfill UCSD's equity, diversity, and inclusion requirement, Doc also has an upper division elective, Doc 100D, in which you're going to get a broad overview of the history we cover in Doc 1, 2, 3 with the first year students. So it's a broad overview of U.S. history, culture, struggles for justice. But unlike the lower division courses, this is a small upper division seminar, about 20 students at most, with Professor Natalie Pass, who will be the instructor. And in this course, the final project is you use your study of social hierarchy and social difference in different communities and different struggles for justice to identify a community organization and propose how your skills in writing can contribute to the mission of that organization. And so for transfer students, 100D is an amazing opportunity, I hope, that you'll embrace to really learn and experience the heart of Marshall College in terms of this vision and this mission to use our learning and our skills as students to take time to reflect on our identity and our position in society and to imagine how to make change and how to affect change in the communities we find important and that are near us. Okay, so that's what Doc is, right? We're primarily a first-year writing program. We fulfill the equity, diversity, inclusion requirement as well at the university. And ostensibly, we are here to help you meet these general education requirements in the university to read and write and research at a college level. But that doesn't really answer the why. Like, why does Doc matter? Why should you care at all about Doc? And I can only suggest the answer to why you should care at all about this course by telling you why I care. Okay, why does this class matter to me, right? Why does this program matter to me? And it matters to me in many ways because I went through a course like Doc when I was 19. I went to a tiny, well, not tiny, but fairly small liberal arts university in San Francisco. And they also had an equity, diversity, inclusion requirement that you had to fulfill in your first year. And I was 19, is my first time away, really away from home. And I was looking at the course catalog and I saw this first year seminar on literature from Chinatown. And I thought, that seems kind of interesting. I'll take this class. And this course and that professor, I still remember her name, Professor Eileen Fung, fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life. I had no idea what I was going to do in college or what I would do after college. I had no clue. My mom wanted me to be a nurse because I came from a Filipino family, and Filipinos think that if you're a nurse, that's it, that's success, you should do that. But I don't like blood and I don't like science. And so I didn't know what I was gonna do. And this class opened my eyes to the power of literature and history and culture. And taking this seminar with Dr. Fong, she was the very first teacher I ever had who looked like me. Like, it was such a experience, a shock. I don't know if shock is the right word, but it's such an experience to walk into that classroom for the first time. It was in the basement of one of the halls, I remember. And she looked like she could have been my aunt, right? She looked like me. And we were sitting together with a small seminar of other students, reading these books and these stories about these communities, these Chinatown communities, particularly in San Francisco. And I could recognize my family. I could recognize my own personal experiences. I could see in the stories I was reading the same struggles of my parents who immigrated in the 60s when there was a dictatorship in the Philippines, and who had a small business all their own and worked hard and just tried to survive, tried to just make it in the United States. And this class just gave me the language and the understanding to recognize my own life and my own family, and to articulate my own view and sense of the world, and that I have a place in the world, an important place in the world, a place of dignity in the world. And so this class, this required first year class, fundamentally changed my life. Dr. Eileen Fung became my mentor. I became her research assistant. She supported me, wrote me letters of recommendations. I could study abroad at Oxford for a year, wrote me letters of recommendations and supported me so that I could go to graduate school and become a professor when no one in my family even knew what a professor did or does, or what graduate school in the United States is like. And it just made me realize that what I wanted to do is what she did, is to give students a place to see themselves, to know themselves, to understand themselves. Because if you don't know yourself, if you don't understand yourself, you don't know anything. You don't know anything, right? And so that's why I do this, because I have the privilege of every year working with over 1,000 students, mostly first years and some amazing transfer students, to explore your identity, your history, your culture, your place in this world, in this society, okay? Because we're born into society. We do not choose the family we're born into. We do not choose the skin and the class we are born into. We are just born into this society that's already been established by history, by culture. And so that society is inevitably going to shape us, right? What society thought about women, Asian American women, Filipino American, darker skinned Filipino American women, fundamentally shaped my sense of self and who I am. But it did not determine me. It did not put me into a box that I was destined to just stay in, because I and so many of us around us, we are individuals, yes, born into a society, yes, born into larger social systems. But if we can take a minute to pause and recognize and look at those social systems, then we can make conscious choices to affect that society, to affect those systems, and to make them different and to change them, right? The bottom line is what I want to leave you with for today, and hopefully that'll pick up with some of the 300 of you who will be enrolled in my Doc 1 class in fall, is that society shapes us as people. Society absolutely shapes our sense of self. Society's expectations of your race, your class, your gender, your sexuality, your ability, your nationality, your religion, right? Society shapes our understanding of these aspects of our identity, absolutely. But society does not completely determine you. You can be empowered to change society as well. You can be empowered to shape society differently, and we need to. We absolutely need to right now, especially coming out of this pandemic. We need to make changes. We have to. And so the question I ask my students, the question I ask every student who goes through this program that I help run is, how will you change the world? That is the question I'm asking you. And I take it incredibly seriously. I'm not being corny or cheesy or just throwing that away, because I fundamentally believe in each and every one of you as individuals who have the capacity to recognize their own power and to make conscious and deliberate choices about the world you live in, the world you were born to, yes, but the world that you can change and recreate anew. All right. So I hope you have an excellent rest of orientation. And I am so excited, as I said, to meet those of you who will be enrolled in my Doc 1 course this fall. I wish you all the best wherever you are. Take care. Bye.
We thank Dr. Solomon for sharing some of her narrative, culture, and experiences, and how it influences her work today. Every time she gives that speech, I think everyone feels it a little bit. We all get a little bit of chills. And I urge you all to sit with that question that she posed right there of, how will you change the world? It may seem like a big question, but truly what she was saying, she believes that each and every one of us can. So now at this time, we will be going into a short 5-minute break. I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so as we shared in the recording, the University of California, San Diego is dedicated to learning, teaching, and serving society through education, research, and public service. UC San Diego faculty, staff, and students are encouraged to be creative and are rewarded for individual as well as collaborative achievements. So yeah, we'll be going over the principles of community, and I have a couple OLs to help read out. So please welcome Jane and Trang.
To foster the best possible working and learning environment, UC San Diego strives to maintain a climate of fairness, cooperation, and professionalism. These principles of community are vital to the success of the university and the well-being of its constituents. UC San Diego faculty, staff, and students are expected to practice these basic principles as individuals and in groups.
Our principles of community is an aspirational statement about how we want to acknowledge identities and experiences of the members of our community in a socio-historical context, and how we want to ensure we treat one another in our community. Please take a moment to review and type out in the chat a phrase that sticks out to you. And we're also going to switch to the next slide with more principles. And I'm just going to do a countdown in a little bit so we can all send our phrases at the same time. Okay, so on the count of 3, send your phrase in the chat. 3, 2, 1.
Well, looking through all of this, seeing a lot of great like phrases y'all picked out. Rejects acts of discrimination, committed to the highest standards of civility. Seeing a lot of these. Our society carries historical and divisive biases. So yes, recognizing our society and what it holds. Seeing promote awareness through education, freedom of expression, affirming the right to freedom of expression. A lot of those. And yeah, I think you all picked out some really good points from these principles of community. Just wanting to remind you, these are things that the university is committed to doing. And, we as a school, or we as students, are here to hold them accountable to that as well. So thank you all for sharing out. And I believe we can go to the next slide. Yes. So we hope that today serves as the foundation for ways you will continue to engage with your peers and staff, and that you connect with other opportunities to continue your exploration of your own identities, how to build an inclusive community, and connect equity and social justice efforts on campus. Here are some spaces that we can do that. So during Welcome Week, we are hosting throughout Welcome Week, we're hosting identity-specific ways to create space in these conversations. We think of identity and identity development as central to the concept of scholar and citizen. We encourage you to participate in the affinity groups that are aligned with your social identity. So I'm going to be popping that in the chat right now. Hold on, got it. So feel free to check out the affinity groups that we have happening throughout Welcome Week. Oh, I don't know if I did the full link. That might have been my bad. No, I did. Just kidding. Sorry. At this time, I also want to invite our orientation leaders to share in the chat other places and spaces that they've been able to engage in these conversations with their peers. So, as well as if you have any places, please drop those in the chat. And at this time, I'm also going to be passing it over to Fanon.
So thank you, Kayla, and our orientation leaders. And I encourage you all to come out to the affinity groups and check out the campus community centers that are listed on the left side of the slide there. We're going to get into this next part of our session, and we're going to get a chance to do a Who Am I activity. And so if you have paper or pen or plan to use a tablet, this is the time to bring those materials near you. And before I get started, I want to share this language that we get from Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, who is the President Emeriti of Spelman College, a historically Black college and university in Atlanta, and is one of our program sites for our HBCU exchange program at Marshall College. She is also the author of the best-selling book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, and Other Conversations About Race. And Dr. Tatum's work is really around the ways that social identities influence how we are perceived and how we perceive ourselves, how we think about and engage in community, and this kind of external and internal conversation that happens with how identity formulation occurs. And so Dr. Tatum writes, our ongoing examination of who we are in our full humanity, embracing all of our identities, creates the possibility of building alliances that may ultimately free us all. And so as you all learned in part one, our college founding story and vision was around skills and knowledge development so that we can wage a liberation struggle, right? And move towards social justice. And so part of that is getting to know ourselves, right? And sharing those parts of ourselves with others. And so identity matters, and it contributed to the founding of our college, and it continues to matter in the ways that our students experience the campus and how we all collectively experience our society. And so we recognize that when we're thinking about identity, diversity, inclusion, equity, and social justice, we have a lot to learn on the solo level, right, through some self-reflection, and that we also must learn with and in community, right? And so we're going to get an opportunity to do that shortly. And so for this activity, you're going to be asked to respond to a series of questions as quickly as possible with one word or short phrase. So yes, or it is possible. Answers should not be full sentences. And so before we get started, I'm going to ask folks to kind of clear their mind, take some deep breaths, and bring yourself centered and present into our conversation today. The first question is, who am I? Oh, great question, Mary. You're just going to jot this down on a document or on a piece of paper for your own reflection. Thank you for asking that clarification. Okay, so the first question, who am I? The next question, who am I? Third question, who am I? Our next question. Who am I? Next question. Who am I? Our next question. Who do I pretend to be? Next question. Who do I pretend to be? Our next question. Who am I becoming? Next question. Who am I becoming? And our last question. Who am I? Okay, invite us all to take a deep breath. And I'm going to ask us to spend some time individually reflecting on this next series of questions on the next slide. What stood out to you in this about this activity? What was challenging about this activity? And how does reflecting on who you are help you transition into UC San Diego and to Marshall College? So I'm going to give folks a few, like about a minute to just do some internal reflection. And what is ahead is you all are going to go into breakout rooms and to be able to go over these debrief questions alongside your peers and with our orientation leaders. I just want to echo the leaning into the conversation, trusting the process, being okay if this feels challenging or uncomfortable, that you're in community and that we're holding the space collectively together. Okay, so we can open the rooms now. You all are free to join those spaces. Thank you for that, Natalie. And sometimes going into a new environment, right, allows us that opportunity to get that alignment and to get an opportunity to reintroduce ourselves, right, in that more authentic way. So I appreciate that insight. Any other thoughts folks want to add to the conversation in the chat or by unmuting? Okay, all good. We're gonna go ahead and go into take what you need break.
So we will now be transitioning into a conversation about social identities and lived experiences. These conversations are crucial for us all to engage in, as each one of us are responsible for understanding our own position in society. As scholars and citizens, we are all responsible for fostering inclusive spaces, and we like to define some key terms that will be useful or that we'll be using throughout our next presentation and activities. I'd also like to thank some of our orientation leaders who will be helping define these key terms.
Race, a social construct that artificially divides people into distinct groups based on characteristics such as physical appearance, particularly skin color, cultural affiliation, cultural history, ethnic classification, and the social, economic, and political needs of a society at a given period of time. Personally, I identify as Asian.
Ethnicity is a social construct that divides people into smaller social groups based on characteristics such as a shared sense of group membership, cultural heritage, values, behavioral patterns, language, political and economic interests, history, and ancestral geographical base. Personally, I identify as Indian.
Socioeconomic status refers to the social standing or class of an individual or group. It's often measured as a combination of education, income, and occupation. For example, I fall into the category of lower middle class.
Sexual or affectional orientation refers to the sexes or genders to whom a person is emotionally, physically, sexually, and/or romantically attracted.
Nationality refers to citizenship, country or countries with which you may or may not have a legal relationship. For me, I identify as a US citizen.
Ability refers to being differently abled physically, mentally, emotionally from that which society has structured to be the norm in such a way that the person is unable or limited in their ability to move or has difficulty moving. I identify as able-bodied.
Gender identity refers to socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that society considers quote unquote appropriate for men and women. A person's gender may not necessarily correspond to their birth assigned sex or be limited to the gender binary woman or man. I personally identify as a woman.
Sex, the biological classification of male or female. Sorry, y'all, 1 second. Male or female based on physiological and biological features. A person's sex may differ from their gender identity. Personally, I identify as female.
Spirituality is the quality or condition of being spiritual, and it's the attachment to or regard for things of the spirit as opposed to material or worldly interests. Personally, I identify as Christian.
Thank you to our orientation leaders for reading and defining these key terms. So, how these social identities are experienced and those experiences are impacted by a societal structure of power, privilege, and oppression. Social groups are afforded different statuses in the United States based on multiple historical, political, and social factors. This affects the abilities of people in different groups to access resources. Most of the differences in identities are socially constructed. We recognize that there are many ways we experience our identities, and for our dialogue today, we'll be focusing on privilege, empowerment, and discrimination. So once again, I'm going to have some of our OLs read out the definitions, and we'll also be popping them in the chat.
Privilege is the unearned advantages, benefits, entitlements, and/or immunities granted to individuals based solely on membership in a particular identity group. It's an identity you don't have to think twice about. It is easy and safe.
Empowerment is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's right. This is from the Oxford English Dictionary. It's also defined as a place where you find strength.
Discrimination describes the actions or thoughts based on conscious or unconscious bias that favor one group over others. Discrimination can occur at the individual, institutional, and structural levels. Individual discrimination refers to the behavior of individuals towards members of a group, whereas institutional discrimination refers to the policies of the dominant race, ethnic, and or gender institutions who control these institutions and implement policies that are intended to have a differential and/or harmful effect on minoritized groups. Therefore, structural discrimination refers to the implementation of policies and control of institutions which are race, ethnic, and/or gender neutral in intent, but which have a differential and/or harmful effect on minoritized race, ethnic, or gender groups.
Once again, thank you to our orientation leaders for helping define these key terms. So for our next slide, we'll be reading a Brave Space poem.
Thank you, Kayla, and our orientation leaders for giving us some common language for these critical concepts as we transition into talking about our lived experiences and the intersections of our layered social identities with discrimination, privilege, and empowerment. So before we get into that, I'm going to share this poem to help us think about the ways that we're cultivating brave space together. So together we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world, and we amplify the voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We will call each other to more love and truth. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side. And so hopefully you all are hearing in this poem that we're going to make some mistakes, and that's okay, right? And we get to grow and learn from hearing from one another and being able to hold that space collectively, right? So your OLs are facilitating a space, but we're all collectively responsible for creating a space where we can do what Alex shared is really important, right? To be vulnerable, to lean in, and to talk through our identities and experiences. And so if we can go to the next slide. So we are going to respect each other and each person in the conversation today. That looks like honoring the pronouns that folks have and utilizing their names and use. And we're going to share airtime, right? So we want to invite additional voices into the conversation. In Brave Space, you have permission, right, to share as much or as little as you wish. And we acknowledge that this might be challenging or uncomfortable for some folks, but please participate in the discussion. And that might look like engaging in the chat or leaning in, or even just acknowledging like, this is actually challenging for me right now. And that naming is participation, right? Be open-minded and assume good intentions, right? We heard in people's responses in the chat earlier that we're all thinking about what equity and inclusion could look like, right? And the conversations today help us move us closer to that, and just assume that folks are bringing those good intentions into our conversation. We ask that people use I statements and take ownership of your lived experiences and your perspectives, right? And not making generalizations around other folks' experiences or making assumptions around other communities and identities. And use inclusive language to the best of your current knowledge and ability, right? The poem said we all have the right to start somewhere, and we want to make space for that. So thank you for listening to the poem and these community guidelines. If I could get thumbs or head nods from folks that we are committed to these guidelines that are going to help us create this brave space together. Ooh, I love the camera on to show me the thumbs. Appreciate it. Awesome. So we're going to transition into our activity, and I'm going to allow Kayla to do that for us.
Thank you, Fanon. So we're now going to be going into our orientation groups to repeat the activity you all did on Canvas, like the pie chart one. However, during this time, you'll be working with your orientation group and having a deep conversation around your observations and experiences. This is intentional to give you to give you time to think and have independent reflection time before engaging with your peers. So you'll are seeing some of the prompt questions on the screen. You will also have those when you go into your breakout rooms. At this moment, I will be opening up all the rooms. So have a great conversation, and we'll see y'all in a little bit. So once again, welcome back from the breakout rooms. I hope you all had great conversations. And now we're gonna do a community share out. Yes. So we have some of the questions that y'all were asked in the during your breakout rooms, and we're gonna go through them. So for the first is what resonated in your group, and then looking at the board, what do you notice? Any commonalities, any differences? And then what do you think the purpose of including this activity in orientation? And then lastly, how will you apply what you've learned today to your first year at UC San Diego? So if you want to go to the next slide, you can actually see the differences amongst some of your groups and the similarities. Once again, I urge you all to either unmute and share out for any of the questions or use the chat function as well. I can drop the questions in the chat. Yeah. I'm sure you all had some great responses, and we'd love to hear them. And feel free to pick whichever question. You don't think you have to stay in like any specific order of how they're being asked right now. I want to remind you all, this is a brave space. This is also a safe space. So in this moment, we work to create that and ensuring that everyone, whatever you share, is all valid. And I saw you unmute, Alex. So.
Okay, I guess I will share. So I just want to say thank you. This whole group for creating such a safe and supportive space where I feel comfortable enough to share. What really resonated with me and my group is that we all face adversity. And I think it's that these adversities that we face are what kind of make me feel empowered. I've never really shared this before, but I want to go into college not wearing a mask anymore. And what I shared with my group was that the discrimination I faced growing up was being a double minority. I am gay and I'm also Asian, so an Asian man. So there's a lot of struggles that I've had to overcome, but I feel supported enough to share my experiences in hopes to inspire, courage and be yourself, your most authentic self. And yeah, so I just want to say thank you for this opportunity for me to grow as a person and to be brave. I really appreciate all of you. Sorry, I'm like, it's kind of emotional. I can hear my voice like shaking because I've like never really like been so open about myself in front of so many people. So I'm just trying my best.
Not me, about to like tear up right now. Thank you, Alex, for being so vulnerable and so just like willing to like open up. I understood this is a group of 140 people who you may not know super well, and for you to have the courage to let us know like just a bit into who you are. I want to thank you so much for sharing out, and that was amazing. Giving a hug to you. My eyes got like a little teary-eyed, but yes. Yes, we're all giving a virtual hug to you at this moment. But thank you so much again. And that was a very brave and courageous thing for you to do, especially to be the first one to unmute and share like that. That could be, yes, but thank you. Yeah. Oh, I see some people dropping some things into the chat.
Is it cool if I share?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, so one thing that definitely resonated in our group, that there were some people that would put that they were most discriminated in a certain sector of the pie chart, whereas other people would put that that's where they feel like they experience the most privilege. And for me, I feel like where I experienced the most privilege, I also did experience discrimination because I personally put race. And I think that it's interesting that there was a group that no one put anything for race. But personally, I know that even though I am a minority and I am Asian, I will experience discrimination from time to time. But because Asians are viewed as the model minority in America, it makes it so we experience a different kind of discrimination. Like, for example, there's this one park in my hometown that recently got changed to being private property. And when my friends and I in high school went to this park because we wanted to watch the sunset, after band practice and we had a run-in with law enforcement, we just got let off with a warning, as opposed to the situation going very differently had we been a different minority group, because we just looked like a group of Asian band kids coming out from marching band practice, watching the sunset. And we didn't have our bags checked. We didn't have any of that happen to us because we didn't look suspicious because of our race. And in my hometown, there was an incident of police brutality against one of my high school classmates, and he actually lost his life a couple months ago. So that entire experience just kind of reminded me and a lot of my friends in my hometown that we do experience privilege sometimes, even though we don't see it, and we can experience privilege and like discrimination based in like the same center of our identity, essentially. And that was like really difficult for a lot of us to come to terms to. And it was just a very like difficult experience overall, especially to experience all of that during quarantine.
Thank you, Gretna, for sharing, first of all, and understanding like and discussing about like the complexities of even just like race in it. Race in it of itself has a lot of complexities, and then like understanding like even though like maybe a minority, understanding that there are privileges in certain aspects. And I want to thank you for sharing out. Yes, genuinely, thank you. Genuinely had me tear up right there. But I thank you for sharing. Thank you for like, I think just taking that moment and like even like stepping back and recognizing. And I, you know, as someone who is Black, that really, I think that, sorry, I'm about to get all emotional up in here. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel it. It was really difficult for a lot of our high school because this was like a classmate that we went to school with, and like we graduated with him. And to have that happen during quarantine at the height of BLM, it was super difficult for us to go through that, considering we thought that we lived in a more progressive neighborhood, considering that it was like majority minorities. And like we thought that like living in the Bay Area, that could never happen to us. But that really shook up our community. And overall, it made us really reflect on our privilege and what we have and what we don't.
Wow. I appreciate you so much for sharing and for, you know, even just like, I don't know, like sharing this narrative and being open and being vulnerable and letting us know. I really appreciate that. And this is like kind of like why we have these conversations, we do these activities, is because these conversations need to be held. And I just want to thank you for sharing. Yeah, y'all really in the chat, y'all also popping off. I think it was Matthew who earlier talked about how feeling empowered by their ability, which was cool to see. It's hard to find confidence in your own ability sometimes. Thank you for sharing out in the chat. Really appreciate that. And I'm glad that, you know, you're feeling empowered in this space. I'm glad it was a safe space for you to feel that. And this is what we strive and work towards. It's what Fanon put in the chat. It's super important, acknowledging positionality and yeah, like where we hold privilege and how we can leverage that. I think that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, about like it's okay to recognize having privilege, but it's how can we use that to help other groups of people who don't have that same privilege. So I think that's such an important key, like a key aspect of what we try to do here. Yeah, if anyone else like in the chat, you want to unmute. I love this space that is being created right here. I love what you all are saying. I love how you're all feeling empowered to share. Oh my gosh, I wish you were all my orientees, please. Just the conversation, I love it. Yes, we do love this energy, Stacy. I love this energy. But yes, also want to make space if any of these other questions, seeing, I think a good one is, what do you think the purpose of including this in orientation, this activity? Any of you have any thoughts on that? But also don't feel limited just to that question or any of these questions. Please share out. Love to hear your own experiences and whatnot.
I think a lot of us, like what we realized like going into this is that maybe at first we were like kind of scared to like be our authentic selves, but then like after the activity, when we like discussed it, we saw that we had like lots of like intersectional like experiences, and there was like an overlap, and that like together, if we talk about this, we can make a change, a more positive change. And I think our generation is like really valuable to like our future, because like we're more willing to talk about like historical injustices and negative experiences, and trying to think of ways that we can like resolve these or come together to make like a more positive difference and actually like take action instead of just suppressing our feelings.
Yes, Natalie. Yes. I love that point. And I think that's such an important, like a key aspect of, I think like this generation is just not willing to accept the crap that has been, you know, been said before, been done before. It's quite literally like being fed up, and we're like, no, we're not gonna like let it be the norm anymore. And I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think you are absolutely correct. Ooh, what Sam put in the chat, be dissatisfied with neutrality. That is so true. You know, it's like ignorance isn't bliss, ignorance is like dangerous, things like that. And I thank you all for sharing out. Feel free to keep it coming. Like, y'all are amazing. You're got me in my feelings at the moment.
In regards to like the purpose of this activity, I really liked it just because we are virtual. Like I feel like if we could all be like in one big group or something, it might be a little bit easier on the outside to see a more like a diverse group and everything. But getting to see this, we also get to see ability, we get to see gender, sex, like we get to see all this things that people are struggling with or may have like I don't know, just insight on. So like going into this, we're all part of Marshall College. We want to create that like Marshall community, but now we have a better understanding that we're all in like this family, but also like we get to acknowledge like the differences that we have and get to empower each other, even if we ourselves aren't feeling as empowered in a specific identity or something like that. But I really like this activity.
Thank you, Samantha. I agree. Yeah, what you were saying about this, we are a family, but there are, you know, there's differences within the family, not. I think that was a really beautiful point. It was well said and beautifully said. Hi, so we are actually going to keep going with the next parts of the presentation, but once again, keep sharing your experiences. We're here for it. We're here to share those with you and, you know, listen. But yes, I just want to thank you all first for being super vulnerable, being super open. And at this moment, we will be going into a take what you need break. We'll be playing some music, and I believe we're actually going to do a little stretch just because we realize we all been sitting for a hot minute. I'm going to pause real quick. Okay. So hi, everyone. I hope those 5 minutes were just a good moment or a good time for you all to reset and just take a moment for a pause. I hope that stretch was great. Erin is a professional when it comes to the coconut stretch. So yeah, so now we are going to be transitioning into our next activity, which is social justice plus you. So at this time, we want to share further some of the ways our identities connect to our Marshall community, and to think about how you might engage in social justice issues during your time at UC San Diego and in your future careers. This is meant to be an open conversation with your peers. So we have some polls and I'm going to be launching them. So that will be fun, be exciting. So the first one is asking, my most salient identity is, and for anyone who, the word salient, oh, did it launch? It did not. Did it launch? The poll? Do you all see it? No? Thank you, Tiffany, for being on the chat. Oh, the poll is like, oh, we don't see it. Okay, sorry. I think it just, oh, I think it's taking a hot minute for it to load for me. It's a great time for this to be doing this. There it is. There it is. My most salient identity is ... And salient, thank you, Tiffany, for putting that in the chat. It is most notable or most prominent. So yes. Okay. Love seeing the answers. I'm going to give you all maybe about 40 more seconds or so to just take time, answer the question. Okay, maybe about 10 more seconds or so. So make sure you get your answers in there. Okay, I think we're going to end the poll right now. Thank you for whoever ended it. And I'm going to share the results, hopefully, which, so I don't know, something about the poll for me right now. It's taking a little bit longer for it to, there it is. Okay, so as we're saying, some of y'all, it's a tie between race and ethnicity being your most salient identity, but each category has been picked at least one time. So we're saying that these are the most salient identities you all hold. We also want to just take this moment to recognize that you all have different experiences and you come from different backgrounds, and we just wanted to validate those identities, because I know at times it can be hard to pick which is like, oh, like what's my most like prominent one, when you may feel there may be multiple. So we just want to validate that feeling. And yeah, next we're going to be going to our next poll. Okay, it's going to be number 4. Thank you for whoever is doing this. You're amazing. So this is, I hope to explore this social identity more during my time at Marshall College / UCSD. So yeah, I'll give you about a minute or so to finish up this, or to answer this question. Okay, about 5 more seconds, everyone. Okay. Seeing the answers start to slow down, you all are probably close to finishing it up. Okay, so I think we're going to stop the poll right now. And then Thank you for sharing the results. So we're seeing that more, the one that people want to explore more, ability. We're seeing ethnicity is pretty close in second, but yeah, I also want to remind you all and let you all know that our campus community centers and programs are great spaces for you to explore social identities and social justice issues more. Use this resource map that Fanon popped in the chat to take a look at the community centers, or take a look at the community center layers for a little bit about each center and where they're located on campus. We just want you all to know that like these are great spaces in order for you to explore these identities during your time at college. And once again, a great start, maybe these affinity groups we are hosting all throughout this week. So keep that in mind as well. We have many opportunities, and you have many opportunities to, explore who you are, and yeah, throughout your time here at UC San Diego. So we're going to stop the share on this one, and then we have one more poll as well. Thank you, Fanon, for dropping that in the chat. Thank you for whoever started the share for this. And this last one is the social identity I am most nervous about bringing to UC San Diego is, once again, I'm going to give you about a minute. Okay, maybe about 15 more seconds. Okay, I think we can just about end the poll. Okay, and thank you for sharing. So we're seeing that a lot of people are nervous about bringing their identity of race, we're seeing ethnicity, we're seeing that all have been touched upon a little bit here. I think all are 9% and above. So I want to thank you all for sharing with us and just taking this moment. So we're going to stop sharing right now. Hopefully stop shares.
Just want to add here that we all have nerves about bringing different parts of our identities into this community. And that's why us being so present in how we're trying to include and value diversity equips us to create a community where maybe a peer is less nervous about bringing that identity because they see the way that we're inclusive of that identity and are welcoming of all of our authentic and layered identities.
Thank you, Fanon, for adding that in. Oh, sorry, a poll just popped up for me. Sorry about that. But yeah, we have also, I believe, at this time, we do have a question that we're going to pose for you all. I'm going to drop it in the chat, which is, what social justice issues are you most passionate about? So we're going to actually do what we did earlier, that 3, 2, 1, and then we're going to send. So I'm going to give you all, I'm going to first pop that in the chat, that question. I'm going to give you all about maybe 30 seconds to type out a social justice issue you're really passionate about. And then I'm going to count down from 3 and we're going to press send together. Okay. I'm even going to do it with you because I think that's only fair. And feel free, if you have multiple you're passionate about, I urge you to put in all the ones you are passionate about. If I can see, maybe for those who have the cameras on, if you want to give me some thumbs up, if you are ready to do the countdown and press send. I see some thumbs, I'm seeing some thumbs. Okay, very helpful, very helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna do the countdown. So 3, 2, 1, everyone press send right now. Whoa, look at that. I love when that happens. So great. Okay. I'm going to quickly just go through, and I urge you all to go through and see who you have a connection with and what you share passion about. And I urge you to maybe, get in touch with them. Seeing climate policy, indigenous knowledge. I'm seeing immigration. I'm seeing, access to quality education. Seeing the wealth gap, racism, sexism. Seeing things in regards to LGBTQ+. I'm seeing an LGBTQ+ rights, racial empowerment for minorities, class issues, immigration, seeing houselessness, or not, no, people with that. Sorry, I'm reading incorrectly.
Voters' rights was also listed, right? So all of us are coming with a number of issues that we're passionate about, and we're bringing that into the Marshall community. So at this time, we're going to give you all an opportunity to reflect on all of the topics we've discussed in today's session, and thinking about how that connects to the idea of scholar and citizen, which is our philosophy here at Marshall College. And so we will rejoin the breakout rooms and have you all connect collectively around these issues and other issues you're passionate about. And then we'll come back together shortly. So see y'all in a bit. Oh, I opened the room. Sorry, my bad.
Hi, apologies.
It's okay. You all will go to your rooms now. See y'all in a bit. Kayla, are you? I messaged Amy.
Should I
I'll
pop
message
in?
you?
Okay. Should I pop in there? Or having trouble with breakouts? Risa, do you see the option? Oh, I think she got it. Okay. Everyone who is in the breakout room or who's not in the breakout room at the moment. Sorry. Everyone who's not in the breakout room at the moment, please press the join breakout room function.
If you're on a laptop or tablet, it should be at the bottom of your screen. And if you're on a phone, it should be on the top right.
Fanon, I don't know if I can't bring them back to the main session. I can only redirect them. I'll go check in with her.
Okay, sounds good. You saw the name that I dropped. Okay.
Yes, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. Hi, Charlie. Is there any way I can support you getting into your breakout room? You can either unmute and share, or it's room 8, Kayla.
Thank you.
Or you can drop in the chat if you're having some issues. Just a note, Charlie, that we do attendance throughout orientation, and participation in the breakout rooms is critical to this counting towards your completion of orientation. So
Oh, sorry. I was inside the restroom.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's all good. Do you see how to
Yeah.
re-enter your room?
I just came back.
Okay, sounds good. So they just got in there like a minute or so ago. Back.
Hello, everyone. I think Fanon just said it, but yes, hope you all had great conversations. I hope that was a really productive time for you just to reflect on the session. And yeah, I mean, these conversations are super important. And this is not the first time you'll be having these conversations here at Marshall College. And now I'm going to pass it to Fanon with the takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you, Kayla. So some of the major things that we're hoping you got out of today's conversation is that we all have layers of social identities and that they play a part in our lived experiences in our more general life and society, but also on our campus and in our Marshall College community. And that as scholars and citizens, we acknowledge and we think critically about the societal context that we are operating within, right? And that our careers are going to operate within as well. And that, as Dr. Solomon shared, we wholeheartedly believe, and this is a part of our Marshall philosophy, that each of us have a hand in shaping a future and moving towards a more inclusive and equitable world for all of us. And so you all have an opportunity, and we all as a community have an opportunity to bring your skills, your passions, your curiosities into our community and to develop maybe new curiosities and knowledge points and skills so that we can work collectively on social justice issues. And so we hope that you stay open and continue to engage around these topics. And we acknowledge and know that our community is stronger and our community is more inclusive when we all can bring our identities, our perspectives, and our lived experiences into the conversation. So as we wrap up this portion of orientation, we think it's important to circle back to our history and the founding of the college, which you learned a little bit about in part 1. If you can go to the next slide. And if we can go to the Angela Davis slide. And we shared this short and powerful quote to start Thurgood Marshall orientation a few days ago. And we will close with it. Because without knowledge and understanding of where Marshall College began, we cannot fully embrace where we are now and where we have the power to go forward as a collective. And so these are the words of Dr. Angela Davis. We wanted our goals to be transparent. Lumumba Zapata College, in our theoretical formulation, was to be a place where our pupils could acquire the knowledge and skills we needed in order to more effectively wage our liberation struggle. The college would never become the revolutionary institution we had originally projected. Concessions were going to be inevitable. The most important responsibility resting with us was to ensure that whoever became involved in the college, students, faculty, and staff alike, carried on the legacy of struggle out of which the idea of Lumumba Zapata was born. And so as students entering Thurgood Marshall College, you are now connected to this history and legacy. And as a staff member in the college, I work alongside you to hold this collective responsibility for ensuring that the legacy of social justice continues. And so I thank you for your reflections, for your engagement, and for your perspectives today. And we hope that you are just as excited as we are to continue to engage in this collective work. So thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing me the honor of spending this time with you today.
Thank you so much, Fanon. Everyone, give Fanon a round of applause and hype her up. She did amazing, and we just really appreciate you joining me for part 2 of orientation. And yeah, we are almost done with orientation, almost. There's still one more thing y'all are gonna have to do, so hold tight. I promise we'll try and get you out of here very soon, I promise. But just want to take this time to say thank you all for being here. I'm so glad I got to, I don't know, just hear from you all. You made me cry at one point. That was pretty crazy. But yeah, welcome to Marshall, and congratulations and welcome to the family. So happy to have you all here. And we will now be completing the remainder of orientation in your small breakout groups. Your OL can field any questions and refer out any as necessary if you have any. Your orientation leaders will also remind you that you have Canvas modules that are due next Friday, the 24th, and you must also start the orientation survey, which they will provide you with. We just wanted to thank you for being here with us, and we're excited to have welcomed you to UC San Diego and Marshall College. We hope that the connections you built over these 2 sessions with your orientation leader and your peers continue outside of this space. We'll now be putting you all into breakout groups, and if you ever see me around campus, please say hi. I would love to meet all your friends. Please, we're gonna be besties, I promise. So say hi to me, and I promise I'll say hi to you. I'm gonna stop the recording and open up